بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So as I had mentioned in our last week, that in reality I'm using the topic of Abdullah ibn Zubayr to talk about incidents of Islamic history that occurred during his time and were indirectly and directly related to him. And again, I'm being very explicit here so that people understand what is going on. That this is an era where many tragedies took place, and the average Muslim, there's no need for the average Muslim to study these tragedies. It does not increase Iman, it brings about doubts, it brings about a type of depression. Their understanding of Islamic history is completely destroyed, and therefore, we as Ahl Sunnah, Sunni Muslims, we try to just move on. Tilka ummatun qad khalat, as Allah says, that's a generation that has already gone by. Laha ma kasabat. They have to deal with their issues. Walakum ma kasabtum. You have to deal with your issues. And this is a fundamental difference between us and the non-Sunni, the dominant non-Sunni group. The other non-Sunni group, their entire religion and theology is based upon what happened in this century, as you are aware. The entire theology, and that's why I said this when I talked about Karbala, the average Sunni, by and large, is not aware of what happened in the first century, whereas the other group, they're very much aware, but they have a slant, their own slant, but they're very much aware, because their theology is based on that history. Whereas for us, our theology is not related to that history. Our theology is based upon Allah, our good deeds, akhirah. We have to do with ourselves. What happened, happened. There's only advanced students should be studying it. The average Muslim that's struggling to pray 5 times a day, there's no benefit for that person to go back and hear what happened to Ibn Zubayr and Karbala and Hussein. Nothing's to be gained. What happened, happened. Life has to go on. However, those that are interested, those that have a basis, inshallah, there's some benefit in going over it. And that's why I am disguising this talk within Abdullah ibn Zubayr. We've done the Seerah, 105 episodes. We've done, how many, 70 episodes of the Sahaba. Now, at the very end of this, somehow we're just squeezing it in. So those that get this far, alhamdulillah, they're supposed to be this far. Otherwise, I don't see the point in having a special lecture just about this, because there's not much benefit. And truly, it is very saddening. Even today, I was doing all my research around, and you just feel depressed. Wallah, you feel depressed about such great Sahaba, such great people, and Makkah and Medina, and what's going on. You cannot help it. So anyway, khair, this is for, as we said, those that have come this far, then they should study these things. Otherwise, there's no benefit for the average Muslim. So with that disclaimer, today is, inshallah, lecture 2. There will be a lecture 3 as well, and then we're done, inshallah, with Abdullah bin Zubayr. So today our main thrust is going to be the incident of Al-Harra, the massacre of Al-Harra, which was one of the saddest tragedies that took place during the time of Ibn Zubayr. He doesn't play a prominent role, he plays a secondary role. Okay? He plays a second, he's in the background, but he's not prominent. So let's set the stage. Last week we already talked about Ibn Zubayr. We mentioned that when Yazid was nominated by his father Muawiyah, people were grumbling, they weren't happy, but they didn't do anything. When Muawiyah died and Yazid declared himself Khalifa, that's when a number of key people said, we can't have this. And the 2 main people were Hussein and Abdullah ibn Zubayr. And Hussein, radiallahu anhu, we did his trajectory. You can listen to that online. And what happened, happened. Abdullah ibn Zubayr rethought, tried to renegotiate, didn't work. So, as we said that Yazid was arrogant in his own way, and he said to Abdullah bin Zubayr, you have to come in chains to Damascus. That's the only way I'll accept it. And Abdullah bin Zubayr said, I'm not going to do that. Even the trick that I'll give you golden chains and silver rope didn't work. It's still a humiliation to be brought in chains, and also Allah knows what's going to happen when he leaves Makkah. He's safe in Makkah. So Ibn Zubayr refused, and that's when he nominated himself to be the Khalifa. Okay? Now, the first time in Islamic history, barely 30, 40 years after the death of, or actually, sorry, 50 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, the Ummah has divided into 2 Khalifas. Just, this is going to be the norm. You're going to have multiple rulers. Okay? This is the first time it's happening that Ibn Zubayr declares himself a Khalifa, and he takes bay'ah from the people. And he essentially gets rid of the governor from Yazid that was in Mecca. Khalas, you leave, get away. We don't need anything to do with you. Long story about that. We don't need to get into that. But eventually, he basically expels the governor. Go back. Okay, this happens. Now, that's in Mecca. Medina is where our story is going to happen today. Medina is where our story is going to happen. Remember, Ibn Zubayr grew up in Medina. He's born in Medina, the firstborn of Medina. He fled to Mecca to refuse to give bay'ah to Yazid. Remember that. So now he is in Mecca. All of his friends, his colleagues, his supporters are still in Medina. Okay? طيب, what happens? The governor of Medina under Yazid, the governor of Medina takes charge of Medina. And some tensions escalate, and he changes the tax policy, he increases the taxes, the kharaj of the land, and many of the children of the Sahaba, they began to grumble and resent what's going on. And tensions arose, especially in how the governor treated them. They considered this to be very disrespectful, and it was, that they were not given the izzah that they deserved, and the governor was harsh upon them. And so they grumbled about revolt and whatnot. Yazid sent a threat to the people of Medina. Yazid sent a threat to the people of Medina. And he said, you have two options. Either you send a delegation to me of your senior most, royalty or whatever, nobility, or else, ... It's a threat. Send me your best, and I will give bay'ah from them directly. I'll take bay'ah from them directly, so that I know that your city is under my control, or else you'll have to deal with me. So the people of Medina decided to go to Yazid, and a delegation went of senior nobility of Medina. A delegation of some of the senior-most people who went. The senior-most person in the entire group was Abdullah ibn Hanzala. Hanzala was Ghasilul Malaika in Uhud. Remember Ghasilul Malaika? That's Hanzala, the one whom the angels did ghusl when he was lifted up. And the Prophet asked what is going on, and then he found out that he was newly married and he was in state of janaba, and he didn't take ghusl, and he went out and became a shaheed. Right? This Abdullah is that newly married, the son. Right? SubhanAllah. That incident and that night, now this is Abdullah ibn Ghasilul Malaika. Okay? And he is a minor Sahabi in that he has seen the Prophet as a child. See, this is the point. This generation, there are dozens and dozens of what we call mukhadram. Who are the mukhadram? The mukhadram are those who were very young when the Prophet was alive. So most likely they saw him, as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old. They saw him, but they didn't quite study or narrate from him. Right? So that's the level that is the very lowest level of the Sahaba. And their rulings are slightly different than the senior Sahaba. So this is a mukhadram. So Abdullah ibn Hanzala. Also in this group was Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. You all know. And this is the one the Prophet rubbed his head. When? When his father died, a shaheed, in the battle of Mu'tah. The Prophet visited. This is the same Abdullah. The same Abdullah. Now he is a full-grown man. He's one of the senior most. Of them as well is Abbas ibn Sahal ibn Sa'ad. Sahal ibn Sa'ad is one of the Sahaba. Abbas ibn Sahal ibn Sa'ad. And many of the other children of the senior Sahaba. This is that generation now. They are now men. So they go to Yazid in Damascus. And Yazid does not meet them for 10 days. And for 10 days he... this is a tactic. Let me finish. For 10 days he showers them. He showers them with luxury and gifts. Okay? He now is trying to soften them up. And he gives the excuse that he is sick and he cannot meet them, so just wait. And he just treats them with great luxury. And he then calls them into his gathering and treats them with the utmost respect. And he gives them lavish gifts. Abdullah ibn Hanzala came with 8 sons. He had 8 sons. He was gifted 100,000 dirhams. And each son was given 10,000. They go home with a fortune. Right? And Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, and all the delegation, they go home basically very, very rich. And they express their concerns about the governor. And Yazid says, I'll resolve it, don't worry. So he basically becomes very soft with them. And he gives them his whole heart. And this is going to now backfire in its own way. So they give him the oath of allegiance. And they then return back to Medina. And around this time, Karbala takes place, and the news comes back from Karbala as well. Okay? Now, and this is something that, in hindsight, is 2020. One wonders, was this the wisest thing for these great people to do? This is ijtihad that they made. When they came back to Medina, they renounced their oath of allegiance to Yazid. Okay? When they came back to Medina, they publicly, Abdullah bin Hanzala was their leader now of this group. And he climbed on the minbar of the Prophet ﷺ and he publicly renounced. And he said, I take back my oath. And the entire group, so they had discussed this and they had come to a unanimous agreement that we don't want Yazid to be our Khalifa. Somebody said, didn't you just take all of these treasures? You took all of this money. And they replied that we took this money to strengthen ourselves against him. We're now going to use it against him. Basically, it's like a tactic of somebody who is your hard enemy, you have zero sympathy for, you're willing to take from them to fight against them. Okay? So they had zero actual sympathy for Yazid. And of course, the same charges that they made. He's a drunkard. He's surrounded by women and wine and music. I mean, to be brutally honest, like I said, and Ibn Taymiyyah mentions this as well, the sins of Yazid, by and large, are not any more or less than the sins of the majority of rulers. It was just his qadr that he has these sins when the Sahaba and the sons of the Sahaba are alive. And it was his qadr that the people he's fighting are not the average person, it's Hussein radiallahu anh, right? Otherwise, the majority of khulafa are doing the exact same thing. You see what I'm saying? That's just the way things are. The majority, and I'm sorry to be blunt here, but this romanticized version of history, you guys need to flutter down to reality. Power corrupts, even amongst our khulafa. That's why Umar ibn Abdul Aziz is an exception and not the rule. The rule is that these types of people, they have to do dirty things to be in power. That's killing and whatnot. And then when you have that much power and money, it's very difficult to remain straight. And the pleasures of the flesh become normal. So Yazid was known to be a drunkard. He was known to delay the salah because he's drunk. Because again, in that stage, the Khalifa led the salah. Okay? So if he's drunk, his advisors would prevent him from leading the salah. The whole congregation's waiting for Yazid to come out. And then he'll lead them half drunk. Can you imagine the sons of the Sahaba, how they would feel? Can you imagine this is Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Abi Talib and he has to pray behind a drunkard? Can you imagine? I mean, psychologically, you fully sympathize that in their minds, they haven't seen what we have seen of our rulers, right? Tequila shots are the least of our worries, no big deal. You know, they haven't seen what we have seen of our rulers. This is the first time they're seeing this type of fitna and fasad. Even Muawiyah radiallahu anh, there's nothing about women and wine in his biography. That's not him. Some people have criticized him for some ijtihadi issues, but overall in terms of akhlaq and deen, he's a sahabi. He's praying on time, he's whatnot. Now his son is not like that. So they say basically that we're going to cut off. And Abdullah ibn Hanzala, basically Ibn Hanzala, the main guy, and of course Ibn Zubayr are friends. And they are of the same package deal. They're of the same group. And so when he renounces, the understanding is that he's joined sides with who? Ibn Zubayr. Okay, because he did not declare himself the Khalifa. He simply said, I get rid of Yazid and my bay'ah to Yazid. And realize as well that overall in the Hijaz, in Mecca and Medina, there was very minimal support for the Banu Umayyah. The Umayyads were not people of respect in that crowd because they know who Yazid is, they know who Muawiyah is, they know who Abu Sufyan is, they know who Hind is. How can you compare that lineage with the lineage of the Ahl al-Bayt? And I have said this in the Karbala lecture, and I'll say it again. If we had been alive at that time, it is very likely many of us would have sympathized with the Shia to Ali, meaning the group of Ali and the Ahl al-Bayt, because you have Zayn al-Abidin, you have Hussein. How can you not sympathize with them versus these other guys, right? Put yourself in their shoes. So, Banu Umayyah, people are not very interested in them. And they are seeing, and again, remember, these are people, all of them, they have seen Umar ibn al-Khattab and his Khilafah. In their own lifetimes, from Umar you have Yazid. How can they not over-exaggerate and say, this is the end of times and we cannot have Yazid? You understand that. The same person who sees Umar as a Khalifa now has to deal with the likes of Yazid. Understandable that what we consider to be relatively small things was made such a big deal that they say we cannot have this person as a Khalifa, and so they renounced publicly the allegiance to Yazid, and the people of Medina took Abdullah ibn Handala as their governor, not as the Khalifa. Okay, he didn't declare himself to be the Khalifa. Now, what's going to happen to the governor of Yazid in Medina? Because he's appointed there. So they surrounded his house, the mobs now, the Muslims of Medina, and they forced him to renounce his title. They did not become violent. They did not hurt anybody. But they took political office by force from them, and they basically told, now in those days, every tribe would live in one part of the city. This is even in the time of the Prophet. You had the Ansari tribes, the Khazraj, the Aus, and within them the Banu Sa'd. Each one has its own city. So the Umayyad tribe has its own area of Medina. Okay, and in that area was still the house of Uthman ibn Affan, because he's the Umayyad. Marwan ibn al-Hakam is here right now. Okay, and basically the cousins and whatnot of the Khalifa and whatnot. So they basically tell this area that you are essentially under house arrest. That's basically, we would call it like that, okay? You cannot leave the city, you have to be monitored, because we don't want any trouble from you. You are the Banu Umayyah in Medina, we don't want anything from you. And there were around 1,000 of the Umayyad clan. Things have grown now. There are around 1,000 of the Umayyad clan, and the elder of this clan in Medina, not the governor, the elder, was Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Now, for those of you who don't know, Marwan ibn al-Hakam is eventually going to become the Khalifa. So he's a very important person. He was the primary secretary of Uthman. So, Uthman and Muawiyah and Marwan are all first cousins. Guys, remember this. Their fathers are all brothers. Okay? Uthman ibn Affan, Marwan ibn al-Hakam, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Those three are cousins. Their fathers are all brothers. Their grandfather is all basically the Umayyad clan. Okay? The Banu Umayyah. These are three first cousins from three brothers. Marwan, Uthman, Muawiyah. Is that clear? Right? That's why they're called the Umayyad clan. Now, Marwan ibn al-Hakam is the eldest and the senior most, and he is put under house arrest as well. Now the news reaches Yazid. Now what has Yazid done? He has honored them. He has given them money. He has tried a tactic of calming down this and that, and the oath was given publicly. We can understand, not that is justified, that Yazid lost his cool completely. We can understand. Yazid went into vengeance mode, and that was what caused the Battle of Harra. Because the people of Medina backed out, Yazid essentially lost it. And when he found out that they put his clansmen under house arrest, firstly he got angry at them. They're 1,000 strong, why don't they fight for me? And in fact, he even said in one version, he said, if they're 1,000 strong, they don't deserve to be defended. What type of, basically cowards are they? They should go and fight for me. And then basically he was calmed down and he was told that, he should go defend them. And so he said that he would send an army the likes of which they had never seen before. So he promised to send an army to Medina. And he said that same army shall then move on to Mecca and deal with Ibn al-Zubayr. Kill two birds with one stone. I'm going to get rid of the entire movement in one go. The people of Medina and the people of Mecca. And subhanAllah, he reached out to one or two people to lead this army. And looks like whoever he reached out, we have their names, but they're not known to you, most of you. He reached out to some key people and they said, I'm not going to attack Mecca and Medina. They had some iman. And one of them in particular, he participated in the battle of Karbala. in the massacre of Karbala. So he sent back to Yazid, he said, I will never combine with the death of Hussein on my conscience the attack of Medina. I can't do it. So some people had some guilt at what had happened, and so they refused the orders of Yazid to attack Medina. Because remember, Medina is a haram. Medina is a sacred city. You're not allowed to unsheathe the sword, much less send an army. And Yazid is saying he wants to send an army not just to Mecca but to Medina in one go. So he finally then gets a very senior general, very seasoned warrior, a cutthroat person with zero conscience, and that is Muslim ibn Uqba. His name is infamous. Muslim ibn Uqba, for what is about to happen. His name is infamous, and it is associated until Yawm al-Qiyamah with the massacre of Harra. Okay? And there are always people with zero conscience in every time and place. They will kill for the sake of their masters and their lords. They don't care at all. And this was that person, Muslim ibn Uqba, that he'd simply had zero conscience whatsoever. And so Yazid raises an army, 12,000 strong. That is a battalion in those days. 12,000 strong. There is no way that the Mecca and Medina can fight against them. It's too strong. And he knows it. I mean, this, instead of now fighting, the people outside of the Muslim lands, instead of conquest, Yazid is now sending armies, the largest armies. There weren't even 12,000 people that attacked the Sassanids in the time of Umar. Now he sends 12,000 Muslims, these are all Muslims, to attack Mecca and Medina. They're all Muslims. All of them, they're a part of the Umayyad army, and he attacks Mecca and Medina. And when this was announced, many senior sons of the Sahaba approached Yazid, those in Damascus, those in other places, and they begged him, they reasoned with him, and they said, don't send an army to the Haram. How can you send an army to the city of the Prophet ﷺ? And the most senior person who spoke to him was Abdullah ibn Ja'far, that he did not participate in with Abdullah ibn Hanzala. He basically took neutral. And so he approached Yazid and he begged him to allow him, Abdullah ibn Ja'far, to speak to Ibn Hanzala, try to negotiate, but Yazid refused to listen because Abdullah ibn Ja'far was a friend of Abdullah ibn Hanzala. Right? Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. He was a friend of Abdullah ibn Hanzala, and he tried to reason with Yazid, say, look, let me calm things down, but Yazid would have none of it. Multiple people tried to speak to him, but he had lost his temper and cool, and that was his nature. We know this from the books that, he was that type of politician. And even, remember last week we talked about, even with Abdullah bin Zubair, Yazid wanted to cut his head off. And Muawiyah said, you can win with mercy, which you cannot win with anger. But that's Yazid. So Yazid sent Muslim ibn Uqba, and he gave him this command, explicit. He said, give them one chance to repent. Give them one chance. If they don't, then go ahead and attack, and for 3 days and nights, you and your troops have full license to do whatever you want. I won't say anything. Then on the 3rd day, go to Mecca. Get rid of Ibn Zubayr. The green light was explicitly given by Yazid to Muslim ibn Uqba. You have one chance. Tell them that they need to submit to me and give their bay'ah to me. If they refuse, then fight them, no questions asked, and then 3 days and nights, basically, 72 hours. Do whatever you want. You are free. You and your troops. Now, realize, troops in those days were more like what we call mercenaries. They don't get a salary, by and large. They'll get food, they don't get a salary. Or if they do, it is nominal. What is their main source of income? War booty, ghanima. Right? So, when the people are told, you have free access to all the wealth for 3 days. Khalas, you're telling a bunch of thugs, a bunch of mercenaries, you're telling a bunch of, and many of these people, their iman is flimsy. They just accepted Islam 5, 10, 20 years ago. This is that generation where Islam has spread so much. And, they're coming from different lands and whatnot. They don't care. Medina is no big deal for them. Most of them would never have done Hajj. But these are brand new, if you like, what I'm saying? These are the political converts of Islam at that stage. This is at that stage. And we need to understand this because, again, it is impossible really for a person of iman to do what happens next. Really, it's impossible. But these people, they're nominally Muslim. Muslim ibn Uqba, by the way, the commander, he's not nominally Muslim. He has a track record. He has a CV. And in fact, his father might even have been, so his family is a good family, but he seems to have been corrupted in this regard. So he said, you have 3 days and nights to do as you please, but then he gave a list. These are the houses you need to protect. Make sure they are not harmed. And number 1 was Ali Zainul Abidin, the son of Hussein, that he said, protect the Ahl al-Bayt. Don't do anything to them. Now, Ali Zainul Abidin, his father had just been massacred by Hussein at Karbala, by Yazid at Karbala. And subhanAllah, wallahi, I never thought of this. So today I was thinking, how tragic for Ali radiallahu anh. This is Ali, the great grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How tragic. He's just lost his father, all of his brothers, all of his uncles, and he was on the battlefield of Karbala. Now he comes back to Medina and he has to face another army, and he's going to lose many other cousins and friends and whatnot. But it looks like Yazid had now a soft spot, and most likely there's also a major guilt from Yazid about what happened. It seems like this as well, that what happened in Karbala, now he wants to protect Ali Zain al-Abidin. Now he's like, make sure his house, nobody happens to that. And he also mentioned some other households specifically that didn't revolt. Okay, some clans that did not revolt, said don't harm these areas. The rest of the city is all yours. So the army of Yazid, 12,000 strong, makes its way from Damascus to Medina, and they camp outside of Medina in the month of Dhul Hijjah, in the year 63 after the Hijrah, 63 of the Hijrah. And this makes it even worse because they're in the month of Hajj. They're in the month of Hajj. Hajj has just finished. And instead of going for Hajj, they're fighting the people of Medina. Subhanallah. Instead of going for Hajj and whatnot, the army is now camped outside of Medina. And of course, the Muslims of Medina, they heard of the army. They tried to prepare and whatnot. And they took their precautions of arming and whatnot. And one of the things that they did was that they forcibly expelled the 1,000 Umayyad clan inside the city. They forcibly expelled the 1,000 people of the Umayyad clan, some of whom were definitely a threat, like Marwan ibn al-Hakam, but others of whom were genuinely pious and righteous people, such as the children of Uthman ibn Affan. These are the children of Uthman, but they are Banu Umayyah. And they are overall very righteous people, one of them being Amr ibn Uthman ibn Affan. Very righteous person, nothing to do, but just because of his blood and whatnot, they forced him to, basically the entire families, everybody was forced out. And obviously this made Yazid and his army even more angry, because these are our people. This is our Qabila. Right? And you see both sides. On the one side, you're worried that they're going to attack you from the inside and you're being attacked from the outside. And then you have the other issue of sympathies and loyalties. How can you trust them? So the army camped outside of Medina. The 1,000 basically had to leave the city and they joined them. But they were promised, the people of Medina made them promise, the 1,000, that you will not fight us. We're allowing you to leave, but you cannot fight us. And by and large, and they get halaf billah. So by and large, they honored that promise. And subhanAllah, here's the point. The people of Medina under Abdullah ibn Handala, they didn't kill anybody. They might have done some things that we can say politically. They didn't harm anybody. They didn't beat anybody. And I'll say this again at the end of our lecture today, inshallah. This is one of the problems, believe it or not, of righteous rulers. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're too soft. And that's great for the righteous people. But when you're too soft, what happens? And we see this even in modernity, by the way. Look around you in the Arab Spring and the countries around and what happened, okay? And that's why, subhanAllah, generally speaking, and this is not a defense of dictatorship. Believe me, you know me. I despise politicians and dictators and dictatorship. Yet at the same time, politics is filthy and dirty. And when righteous people try to rule, generally speaking, even if the person is righteous, the people will take advantage of it. Right? And we see this in the time of Ali radiallahu anhu and others and whatnot. So this is what going on. So they were expelled, and the army camped outside of Medina, and they gave the offer to the people of Medina, and they said, you have one chance, and we're giving you this chance. You come and join us, and together we will fight Ibn Zubayr. You think they're going to accept that now? Right? So they mocked and rejected this, and they said, rather than fighting Ibn Zubayr, we will die to prevent you from fighting Mecca. And this shows clearly that they were under Ibn Zubayr now. Okay? They are willing to die to defend Ibn Zubayr and Mecca. That there's no way we're going to let you come past us until you kill us. And so some transactions, treaties tried to negotiate, and 1 or 2 or 3 days went by, and essentially there was no surrender, and therefore the command was given to attack. Muslim ibn Uqba on one side, Abdullah ibn Hanzala on the other, and a very fierce battle ensued. And it's one of those tragic times in history where quite literally, on the one side, pretty much 90% of the army is sons and grandsons of the Sahaba. And on the other side, 95% of the army are those that have nothing to do with the ilm and iman and taqwa. The Banu Umayyah and their army. Literally, like you can tell iman and kufr, right? But see, in this world, sometimes victory is given, to other people. And Abdullah ibn Hanzala, by the way, his title was, he was called in his lifetime, he was called Ibn al-Ghasil. That was his nickname, the son of the one who was washed, right? Ibn al-Ghasil. That when it seemed as if the battle was losing on his side, he basically rounded up the best and the bravest, and he said, form a circle around me and carve me a path to get to Muslim ibn Uqba, because we need to get rid of him. So Abdullah ibn al-Ghasil, basically Ibn al-Ghasil surrounded himself with the sons and grandsons of Abu Bakr and Umar. No exaggeration, literally. The sons and grandsons of Abu Bakr and Umar. Not of Uthman, because Umayy, and not of Ali, because Al al-Bayt. Okay? So the sons and grandsons of Abu Bakr and Umar on one side, along with the sons and grandsons of the Ansar and whatnot, right? And they formed a core, and they carved out as much as they could to get to Muslim ibn Uqba, until it is said they were barely 10 feet away from Muslim ibn Uqba. Amongst them as well, by the way, was Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, the grandson of Harith ibn Abdul Muttalib, which is basically the grandnephew of the Prophet ﷺ, right? His great-great-grandfather is Abdul Muttalib. And Harith is the brother of Abdullah. Harith is the eldest son. His grandson was in that contingent as well, to fight against Muslim ibn Uqba. And they tried their best, but alas, there were simply too many people, and the sheer quantity of the Umayyad army overpowered them. All books mention the sheer bravery that the sons of the Ansar and Sahaba fought with, but you had too many people, 12,000. You cannot fight against them. And it is truly a tragedy in every single sense. It is depressing to even think about this. So many of the sons of the Sahaba and grandsons of the Muhajirun were killed. The famous Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, he said, when the first civil war took place between Ali and Muawiyah, all of the people of Badr were killed in that. When the second civil war took place, he called it the second war, this one, then the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, Sahaba all died. All of the senior gone now. So everybody has been gone. And for 3 days after this, so the battle was won by the Umayyads. For 3 days after this, A'udhu Billah, the troops went wild in the city of Medina. And that's why it's so painful to even think about this. And truly, even when I was reading it, I decided not to give you too many details even, because it is wallahi depressing. You still have the house of the Prophet ﷺ. You still have the houses of Abu Bakr and Umar. You still have everything there. And you have now Muslim armies marauding and parading and humiliating and stealing from the people of Medina. And who are these people? The children of the Sahaba. There is no doubt that much of the wealth that was taken was literally the possessions of the Sahaba. Literally. Cups and gold and whatnot would have actually been owned by the Sahaba. And this army comes and rampages through and takes everything. And I was wondering to even go down this route or not, but it is better you hear it from me than other people. Unbelievably, what happens when you have wild men? That also occurred. And this is truly unbelievable. In the city of Medina, the daughters and granddaughters of the Ansar and the Muhajirun. And that's why when you study these things of history, you flutter back down to reality and you don't romanticize the past anymore. This is happening when the utensils of the Prophet ﷺ are still there. When the very streets he walked on, that dust is still there. This is human situation. This is the reality of not just the ummah, of the world. And that's how, again, this has been predicted by the Prophet ﷺ, that I see fitan falling here amongst you like the raindrops. He said this, that we're sitting on the houses of Medina, and he looked around and he said, I see fitan falling here like the drops of rain. And one interpretation said this is the Harra prediction, because the fitan took place right in the city of Medina. And not only this, but the senior commanders of the rebellion, now I call it rebellion, I mean, you know, that's what they call it, the senior commanders of Abdullah ibn Handala's forces, those who did not die in battle, they were rounded up and publicly executed one after another. Every one of the senior commanders. And in the battle as well, hundreds. The actual battle lasted 2 days, because again, it's going to take a while. In the battle itself, hundreds of famous people died. And you have people like the sons of Zayd ibn Thabit, whom we discussed 3-4 weeks ago, the sons of Hassan ibn Thabit, many of the sons and grandsons and great-grandsons of Anas ibn Malik. At Hadith in Bukhari, when we did Anas ibn Malik, I said this incident. I said Anas ibn Malik said that, remember, he lived a long life. And he had hundreds of children and grandchildren. And he said, one of my grandchildren informed me that after the battle of Harra, 100 of my own descendants were amongst those who were killed. 100. Because Anas at this stage, he is now 80-something years old, 80, 90 years old. He's a very old man at this time. And, he's now, his children are fighting with Abdullah ibn Handala's forces. He himself is too old to fight. His children are fighting. And Imam Malik, of course, Imam Malik was born after this by a few decades, but he's growing up hearing the stories. Imam Malik said that 700 of the sons of the Ansar and the Sahaba and the Huffaz of the Quran died in the battle of Harra. 700 is not the number died total, is the number of the elite, like the sons of the Sahaba and Ansar and the Qurra of the Quran. 700 in the streets of Medina. And Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri guesstimated that the total number of casualties of the Battle of Harra were 10,000. 10,000. Now, even if that is an exaggeration, still, few thousand, 5,000, 5,000, even if you say, he said 10,000, even if you say he's exaggerating, it's 10,000, and Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri died 129, so he's definitely an authentic source here, and he guesstimated 10,000 people. But the point is that Yazid wanted to send the message. What is the message? It's obvious. Every tyrant, you look at the tyrants now in Syria, and what is the message? Don't dare stand up against me, or else this will be your fate. This is the message every zalim sends to his population. Don't you dare think that you are capable of standing up against me. It is a message that is meant to terrify the rest of the ummah. And the troops, as we said, were given free license, and you can literally imagine this is mob mentality. They're going house to house, ransacking, looting, barging in and taking whatever they want. Now, at that time in Medina, you still have some of the Sahaba alive. You still have some of the senior Sahaba, very few were still alive at the time. Amongst them was Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he's still alive in Medina. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. So tragic, wallahi, I mean, it's just so sad to read these stories. That mobs came into his house and they looted him, leaving nothing in the house. All of his possessions gone. Another mob comes in and they're angry that there's nothing in there. Another group comes in and says, where's the stuff? Because your own guys took it. So they pull a sword out to threaten him. And Abu Sa'id is an old man now. And Abu Sa'id says, go ahead. You will get my sin and your sin. I'm not going to. And he quotes Habil and Qabil. He quoted him, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. He quoted Habil against Qabil. And he said, لَإِن بَسَطْتَ إِلَيَّ يَدَكَ لِتَقْتُلَنِي مَا أَنَا بِبَاسِطٍ إِلَيْكَ يَدَكَ لِتَقْتُلَكَ. If you want to kill me, I'm not going to try to kill you. Now when the other guy saw this, he goes, who are you? Because this is like Iman. And Abu Sa'id said, I'm Abu Sa'id. So he said, the Sahabi of the Prophet ﷺ? He said, yes. So then he left him. Because he said he's a Sahabi, otherwise he would have killed him right then and there. So he left him because he said he is the Sahabi of the Prophet ﷺ. And then eventually it is said that the situation got so bad, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri had to leave the city and camp in a cave that he knew in the mountains of Uhud until the people left after 3 days. This is Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. He had to leave his own house after being robbed down to nothing. As well, there were other, Sahaba as well that were there. Now, some of them, there were commands to leave them alone. Okay, of them is Abdullah ibn Umar. Abdullah ibn Umar, he did not participate in this or that. So the command was given, leave his house alone. Okay, and as well Ibn Abbas and others, they did not participate. So the command was given by Yazid, because he mentioned some names. These are the names. And of course, as well, most prominently, Ali Zain al-Abidin, which is the son of Hussein, right? Hussein's son. And that area was left untouched. And that was the explicit al-bayt. Now, he would live in the house of the Prophet. So that was left untouched. The aftermath, of course, was absolutely tragic. Complete houses destroyed, the whole city in chaos. And Ibn al-Jawzi mentions that over 1,000 women who were unmarried gave birth after the Battle of Harra. Just leave it at that. And these types of details are not mentioned in the books because it is a shame for us. Just small tidbits are mentioned and that's it. It's a shame for us. Okay. No, it's not to cover up. It's just embarrassing for us as an ummah that this happened so soon after death and in the city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And subhanallah, one of the wives of the Prophet was still alive, Salama, and obviously they are living in the headquarters of the Prophet, so that area is protected. So they didn't get to that area. Salama was still alive, and I was just thinking, how would she feel, subhanallah? Our mother Salama. Yani how would she, just, it's heartbreaking, wallahi, to really understand what is going on. So after the battle was over in those 3 days, the main people, as we said, who were still alive, who were the leaders of the camp, Yazid brought them in one by, no, not Yazid, Muslim ibn Uqba, brought them in one by one, and he commanded them to be executed despite the fact that every one of them was a very senior, respectable person, but he spared no mercy for any of the leaders from Abdullah ibn Handala. And in fact, Abdullah ibn Handala, even more tragic, a'udhu billah. So again, Muslim ibn Uqba, he's the standard military thug that every country has. Literally, you wonder, are these people humans or not? He killed the children of Ibn Handala in front of him, one after the other. And he left Ibn Handala for the end. Ibn Ghasil al-Malaika. His father is the one who was taken up, and Jibreel is doing ghusl of his body. And he's born because his father is going out that night and he's a newlywed. That is his birth. And now this is his death at the hands of Muslim ibn Uqba, the governor and the leader of Yazid, or the military general of Yazid. And one of the minor Sahaba, Ma'qil ibn Sinan, this is somebody who was a young child at the time of the Prophet, and he narrates a hadith. Ma'qil ibn Sinan has a few hadith as well. He's now a Sahabi, now he's of course an old man, and he was one of the commanders of Ibn Handala, one of the commanders. Muslim ibn Uqba mocked him. He brought him forward in public and he pretended to honor him. And he gave him a glass of a very exotic juice with honey and whatnot. And he said, do you like this drink? And he said, he drank it. He said, yes, it's a good drink. He goes, this is going to be your last drink in this world. Now you're going to go to Jahannam. He thought he's going to go to Jahannam. This is the man. He thinks he's passing judgment. Going to go to Jahannam. So he mocked him. Like, you honor somebody, put him on a chair, give him a drink. And it was just a joke. And then he killed him right then and there. And again, this shows you how cruel this person is. And these are people, they're being killed execution style. At least one can say in the heat of the war, things happen. We're talking about after the war, when it's clear who's won. Now you're going to bring these people as prisoners and you will kill them. Of the people who was executed was Abu Bakr, the grandson of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. Of them is Abu Bakr ibn Asim ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, the grandson of Umar ibn al-Khattab. So the grandson of Abu Bakr is brought forth in chains and executed in public. The grandson of Umar is brought forth and executed. The son of Talha ibn Ubaidillah, one of the Ashara Mubashara, his son, and his name is Yaqub, was brought forth and executed. And these are people, as I said, prisoners of war execution. This isn't in the battle, which at least we can say we understand that, not that I'm justifying. This is now, you could have forgiven, you could have fined, you could have put in jail, done something, but you want to send the message. No mercy. So the sons of Abu Bakr, Umar, of the great Sahaba are executed in public with their hands and feet tied. And because of this, Muslim ibn Uqba is given the title in the books of history. The people of Medina called him not Muslim ibn Uqba, but Musrif ibn Uqba. And Musrif means the one who went beyond the bounds. Okay, Israf. He's the one who went beyond the bounds. He went unreasonable. So his nickname is Musrif because he went beyond the bounds. And in Baqi' al-Gharqad, there were so many bodies, so many people, they could not give individual janazas to them. So what did they do? They dug a big hole and they just put all of the children of the Sahaba in that hole. And that's why to this day, when you go to Baqi' al-Gharqad, to this day, and those of you that went with me, remember this, we went there. To this day, when you go to Baqi' al-Gharqad, if you go with my group, I give you a tour of Baqi' al-Gharqad. In the meantime, if you can't, there's a video of mine, I did it from the minaret of the Haram. It's on YouTube. I was on the minaret, I got up there and then I did a video of Baqi' al-Gharqad, so even the sisters can see that. So there is an entire section which is as wide as this masjid. It's just a section in Baqi' al-Gharqad. And when you pass by there, you will be told, if you're with a guide, you will be told, this is where the martyrs of Harra were buried. Just a big section, they were just basically put in en masse, because there are too many bodies. They were not given individual graves, too many bodies to be buried. So to this day in Baqi' al-Gharqad, there is a section that is basically for those people. Now, we need to remember that Medina is a haram, just like Mecca. And in particular with regards to Medina, our Prophet ﷺ has very many ahadith about its blessings and the fact that the people who live in it are protected by Allah. And these ahadith are in Bukhari and Muslim and other books of hadith. And of them, and these ahadith are mutawatir, of them the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever brings fear to the people of Medina, Allah will bring fear to him. Whoever terrifies the people of Medina, Allah will terrify him. And of them, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever causes any fitna, any discord in Medina, عليه لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين لا يقبل الله منه صرفا ولا عدلا. Upon him is Allah's la'na and the angels' la'na and all of mankind's la'na. And Allah will not accept anything from him. Sarfan wala adlan means neither the small thing nor the big thing will be accepted from him. And there are many, many ahadith about the sanctity of Medina and that no one is allowed to harm the people of Medina. Well, Muslim ibn Uqba did that. And Allah's punishment was swift. Allah's punishment was swift. After the 3 days were over, the command was to do what? Go to Mecca. Subhanallah. Barely 2 days out of Medina, Muslim ibn Uqba fell sick and he died. and he's buried in some unknown grave in the Tariq. He neither died in the blessed city of Medina nor in the blessed city of Mecca. He died a miserable death, and his grave is in some unmarked locality, and Muslim bin Uqba therefore did not make it to Mecca. Okay, he did not make it to Mecca. However, the charge was given to somebody else in command, and his name is Ibn Numayr, another general of Yazid, and he was given the commands to go march on towards Mecca and to deal with Ibn Zubayr. So the Battle of Harra finishes, and this is now in the year 63 of the Hijrah, 63 of the Hijrah, in the month of Dhul Hijjah. The Battle of Harra finishes. Now they go to Mecca, okay? And they now lay siege to Mecca. The same army that attacked Medina is now attacking Mecca. I mean, unbelievable. This is happening within a generation after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they get to Mecca in Muharram of 64, right? 63 there. Muharram of 64. And the army camps outside of Mecca, and negotiations began with Ibn Zubayr back and forth to see if some type of truce can be done. Obviously, Ibn Zubayr is not going to have any truce at this stage, and so a number of skirmishes take place, mini battles take place, and after 1 month of siege and small skirmishes, Ibn Numayr decides, with the permission of Yazid, to do something that is tragic and so unbelievable coming from the heart of a Muslim. And that is, he decided to use catapults against Mecca. Okay, you all know what a catapult is, right? This is basically their equivalent of a cannon. This is their equivalent of a cannon. So 1 month is going by, and Mecca is a little bit better protected because of the mountains, because of this and that. They can't really, do what they want to do. So they want to weaken, and also Ibn Zubayr had a larger army than Ibn Hanbala. Also because he has more time to prepare, and also because it is Mecca, people are now, and it is said that when people heard that Yazid is sending his army, they came to Mecca to protect against Ibn Zubayr. And we're going to come to this next week. I'm just jumping the gun here. I'll say it today and I'll say it next week as well. At that time, Ibn Zubayr by far was much more popular. You understand why? You have on the one hand this guy, and on the other hand, the Sahabi, the son of the Sahabi, the grandson of the Sahabi, the one whose prayer, whose salah, whose zakah. I mean, again, there is no comparison. So people are flocking to help Ibn Zubayr. So Ibn Zubayr has a massive army. And as I'm going to mention this next week as well, that Ibn Zubayr is deemed to be the legitimate Khalifa by the majority of Sunni historians. At this time, they don't say Yazid was the legitimate. Ibn Zubayr is the legitimate Khalifa. Right? And he shall be the legitimate Khalifa until he is killed, which is going to happen. We're going to mention that next week. We're not going to get to this week. So Ibn Numayr surrounds Mecca, and again, I mean, it's just so sad, wallahi. I mean, what can be said? As if the Harra isn't bad enough, as if it's not bad enough, the Kaaba is destroyed at the hands of Muslims. Now, one can say it wasn't their niyyah to destroy the Kaaba. And that's true. But at the same time, what defense is this? You're sending cannons into the city of Mecca. What do you think is going to happen? You see what I'm saying? There are some, and I'm frustrated by this, there are some who are, we call them revisionists. And revisionists, they want to take a well-known fact and they want to say everybody was wrong for the entire history of the ummah. Yazid was a good guy. And there are people like this, and you will read them online, and there are books like this as well, okay? Everybody was wrong. Hajjaj was a righteous man. So this is revisionism, right? Somebody comes and wants to argue something totally against the grain. And it is mutawatir that Yazid was an evil person. It is mutawatir that Hajjaj was a tyrant. It's something that ضُرِبَ لَهُ الْمَثَلِ. You don't even have to bring any historical fact for this. But what's happening now, and to be brutally honest, and inshallah you know me to be a fair person, so I can say this. It's not one of the reasons, to be brutally honest, is the Sunni-Shia rivalry. Some Sunnis go far left to refute the Shia. So when the Shia go to the far right, and they say Yazid is basically like shaitan, Actually, for them, Yazid is worse than Shaitan. Right? You know this. For them, Yazid is worse than Shaitan. So then you have some Sunnis, they counter. Right? I mean, we don't, no, not worse than, here's the point. We're going to get to Yazid. Yeah, I understand. So his hisab is, we're going to come to this right now. This is today, I will do Yazid, don't worry, a little bit of Yazid. We don't go that far as to curse Yazid by name. I'll explain why in a while. I'll explain why. So the point is, when one group goes to one extreme, the other group will go to the other extreme. And you do find some Sunni historians in our time. By the way, this is not in medieval times, because nobody in medieval Islam would say that Yazid is a good guy. Nobody said that. But today, there are many pseudo-historians and radical revisionists, and they're trying to rethink through. And of the things they say, oh, Yazid did not intend to destroy the Kaaba. And we say, technically you're right, technically. He didn't tell his governor, his general, aim at the Kaaba. But when you're going to throw catapults for days on end towards Mecca, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, it's common sense, you know. So my point is, I'm not a revisionist guy in this regard, and I don't have patience for those who want to defend Yazid in this case, and Ibn Numayr. So the Kaaba was damaged, and in the damage as well, long story, it caught fire because of, there was lamps and whatnot over there, and there was oil and whatnot. So it caught fire, and as a result, the Kaaba was destroyed and burnt. So much so that when finally the forces of Ibn Numayr had to withdraw, we'll come to this, I'm jumping the gun, Ibn Zubayr had to restructure and rebuild the Kaaba from scratch. And this is in the year 64-65 Hijrah. And he knew from his great aunt Aisha, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and this hadith is in Bukhari, he knew the hadith from his great aunt Aisha that the Prophet ﷺ, when he conquered Mecca, he said, if your people were not so newly Muslim, and so they're not firm in their iman, I would have rebuilt the Kaaba upon the foundation of Ibrahim. This is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari right now. Ibn Zubayr didn't need Bukhari, he heard it directly from Aisha. So when he had the chance, he rebuilt the Kaaba, this is very interesting guys, in the shape of a rectangle. Since the time of Ibrahim, it was a rectangle. And remember, when the Prophet was a young man, what happened? They didn't have enough money, so they made it into a square, and they made the Hatim. We did this 7 years ago, right? So, fast forward all of these years, 80 years forward, and Ibn Zubayr rebuilds the Kaaba upon the original structure of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And that is a rectangle. And if you go to the Mecca Museum, which is outside of Mecca right now, still you go there, you go to the Mecca Museum, you will see one of the original pillars of Ibn Zubayr. We saw this when we went. We saw this, one of the original pillars of Ibn Zubayr when he rebuilt the Kaaba. And it is made out of a very fancy wood, one piece of wood that is around 18 meters or 18 feet, high. And it is one solid piece of wood. It is the pillar of the inside of the Kaaba. Ibn Zubayr was the one who ordered it. It is still around to this day. And you find some of the bastions of the putting the pillars on and some of the decorations from the time of Ibn Zubayr. They're still around to this day. You can see them in the Museum of Mecca. So Ibn Zubayr rebuilt the Kaaba upon the foundations of Ibrahim. Fast forward 10 years from now, Hajjaj is going to come reconquer Mecca, and as a arrogance to Ibn Zubayr, he destroys the Kaaba and rebuilds it upon pre-Ibn Zubayr. Right, square again. And later on, it is said in the time of Harun al-Rashid or others basically that they said, should we not make the Kaaba into a square? Or some say Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, should we not make it into a square, a rectangle? And Imam Malik and others, Imam Malik was the one who said, no, I don't want the Kaaba to become a toy between the Khulafa, that they keep on changing it, let it be as it is. And so from that time up until now, it has remained a square. Only for 10 years in Ibn Zubayr's rule, it was a rectangle, only for 10 years. And then it became a discord. Now, I already gave it away. Ibn Zubayr is not going to be killed in this battle. This is the first battle. So Ibn Nubayr surrounds the Kaaba. Catapults are going. Fires happen. The Kaaba is destroyed. Foundations are destroyed. Now, what happens? Why doesn't Ibn Numayr win over Ibn Zubayr when he clearly has more people and he has more troops and whatnot? This is Allah's qadr coming in. What happened? Yazid dies. Yazid dies. Okay, so the battle is going on for 40 days. Bit by bit, skirmishes, mini battles, people are dying. But there's no all-out victor. Eventually, in all likelihood, Ibn Numayr would have won. Eventually, in all likelihood. But what happens? Yazid dies. And Yazid dies at the relatively young age of 38 years old. Okay, and he only ruled for 3 years and 8 months. That's it. Yet he caused so much. 3 years and 8 months. Now, subhanallah, really, ajib, wallahi, history is ajib. As soon as the news reaches Ibn Numayr that Yazid is dead, he calls out to Ibn Zubayr and he says, "Oh Ibn Zubayr, now that Yazid is dead, you have the more right to be Khalifa. So I'm willing to give you bay'ah." Complete switch. But he has a condition. And this is why it didn't go this way. What is the condition? Come with me back to Syria. Come with me back to Syria, and I shall support you. The same guy who for 40 days is attacking the Kaaba, destroying the Kaaba, now he says, as the leader of the troops and whatnot, now that Yazid is gone, I'm willing to give bay'ah to you. Let's go back to Sham and we'll deal with any opponents and we shall establish the Khilafah. And this is one of those big what-if moments. Allah knows what would have happened. But Ibn Zubayr said, I am not leaving Mecca. Why? Guys, why? He cannot trust. He cannot trust. He knows what happens to Hussein. He knows the people. He does not trust. Sham, Syria is all Umayyad. And he feels, and perhaps very rightly so, that if I go to Syria, what's going to happen there? My base is over here. Because remember, Muawiyah was the Khalifa and the governor of Syria for literally 40 years. He established his base. Muawiyah was the first governor of Sham under Umar al-Khattab. And he made it his base. So the Umayyads, their capital, their social fabric is all in Syria, in Palestine, in Damascus. This is their area. And Hijaz did not like them. Neither did Iraq, by the way. Iraq is also pro-Ali, pro-Al al-Bayt. Remember, that's the tensions going on here. So Ibn Zubayr said, no, I'm not going to go to Syria. You're free to give me bay'ah here, but I'm not going up there. And Ibn Zubayr refused that. He wanted to go up there. Was he truthful? Was he not? Allah knows best. It's one of those things, Allah knows. Was it a tactic or not? Allah knows best. It's something that is not, we can't really tell, because he seems to have been very sincere, but you never know with these guys, because these are not people of Iman and Taqwa. These are politicians and generals and whatnot. In any case, because of this, Ibn Zubayr did not feel comfortable, and so Ibn Numayr went back to Syria, and when he arrived there, Yazid had already passed away, obviously. Yazid had given in his wasiyah, in his last will and testament, that his eldest son shall become the Khalifa after him. Okay? And his eldest son, we already gave his name last week, and that is also Muawiyah. Muawiyah ibn Yazid ibn Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan ibn Harb ibn Shams ibn Umayyah. So, Muawiyah ibn Yazid. Now, this Muawiyah, it seems as if he suffers from cancer or something. Allah knows what the disease is. His whole life he has been a sickly, thin man. His whole life he has been in and out of basically a very sick person. And every account seems to mention that he himself seems to have been a righteous person. He was not involved in the sins and whatnot, and he seems to have been a good person. But 40 days after ascending to the office, he passes away. This is the beginnings of chaos now, right? Yazid's dead, Muawiyah is dead now. 40 days, and he dies a natural death. He dies himself. He's a young man suffering, always sickly. His whole life he was sickly, and barely after 40 days he dies, and none of the other sons of Yazid seemed like candidates. Yazid had other sons, by the way, that were younger than Muawiyah. They didn't seem like good candidates. So, who is the senior most member of the Umayyad clan? We already mentioned him. Who? Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Okay, the plot thickens. Marwan. And I was wondering to give a detailed lecture of Marwan. Maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe we'll. Marwan. Was he a Sahabi or not? There's a big ikhtilaf. Because he was born, basically, when Mecca was conquered, he would have been around 4 or 5 years old. And he was in Mecca at the time. Okay? So, Marwan, in all likelihood, he saw the Prophet ﷺ as a young child. Literally, like these children, 4 or 5 years old. He saw him. That's it. That doesn't quite make him a Sahabi. That doesn't make him a Sahabi, it makes him a Mukhadram. That makes him a Mukhadram. It's not quite a Sahabi. And Marwan has a very, very interesting history. A lot of positives and a lot of negatives. Because he was of those who, a lot of things happened and there's a mystery around him, especially when it comes to Uthman radiallahu anh. Was he the one who sent that letter? Remember the story we did that or not? That was the big thing. Was it Marwan or not? So it's a big mystery. Nonetheless, there are signs as well that Marwan had some type of conscience. And this is one of them now what's going to happen. That when Muawiyah dies, Muawiyah ibn Yazid dies, Marwan is the senior Umayyad leader. And Marwan says, I shall give my oath to Ibn Zubayr now. Again, one of those big what-if moments. Marwan announces to his clan that Ibn Zubayr has more right than me to be the Khalifa. Looks like deep down inside, he recognizes who he is and who Ibn Zubayr is. Okay? But his clan and his supporters refused. They said, no way. You have more right than he does. How did they get that? Allah knows best. Okay? And Marwan's father and grandfather were of the worst enemies of Islam. And amongst them were those who threw the sheep on the Prophet ﷺ. So again, the lineage of these people compared to the lineage of those. Not that lineage matters, but still there's something in there, you know what I'm saying? You cannot compare, Ibn Zubayr and Ibn Abi Bakr and Ibn Umar to the sons of those who, threw the sheep on. And there's something remembered by the Sahaba and whatnot. So Marwan is convinced by his entourage that you have more right to be the Khalifa. And that's why he then was convinced, okay, I'll give it a try. We're going to come to this next week. Thus began a civil war for yet another time. Between now who and who? Marwan on the one side, Ibn Zubayr on the other. This is going to last a few years. You all know what happened. Eventually Ibn Zubayr is going to be killed. We're going to talk about that next week. Marwan then becomes the Khalifa for a very short period of time. He's already 70-something years old at this time, right? And subhanAllah, when he dies, for the next 400 years, his children are the Khulafa. Up until 1058 CE, 1,000 years ago, in Andalusia. It is his children, Marwan's, not Muawiyah's. Muawiyah's lineage is now khalas, cut off. Right? Muawiyah, Yazid, Muawiyah, that's it. After that, Marwan, and then Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. And Abdul Malik had 4 sons who were khulafa one after the other. He is the only human in all of history who had 4 sons who were the khulafa one after the other. Right? And amongst them is Sulaiman and Umar ibn Abdul Aziz came in the middle, and Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. And then eventually the Umayyad dynasty ceases in Damascus and it is revived in Andalusia. And for another 300 years in Andalusia it lasts up until the reconquesta of the Christians up north, and then they expel the Umayyads, and the line of Marwan comes to an end 1050 CE. And that's around 400 something Hijrah. Literally 400 years, Marwan and his sons rule the Ummah, or a portion of the Ummah. Now, one final point here. Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan, your question. In his reign, that only lasted 3 years, 3 major incidents took place because of which he achieves notoriety and in fame and in glory. Number 1 is Karbala. Number 2 is the massacre of Harra. And number 3 is the attack of Mecca and the destruction of the Kaaba. Any one of these 3 is bad enough. All 3 in his watch. Now, as I said, you have a new group who are trying to defend him. And they say Karbala was not commanded by Yazid. I went into a long discussion 2 years ago. We went into all of that. And I said, and this is my opinion, that Yazid was ambiguous when it came to Karbala. Neither did he explicitly command the killing of Hussein, nor did he regret it, nor did he punish anybody. So the buck stops with Yazid. I said that in the last time. Okay? However, he did not explicitly command. What he commanded was to stop, but he didn't tell them don't kill him. And he should have. So there is this ambiguity, and perhaps he wanted, perhaps he didn't. Allah will be his judge in that regard. Harra, did he command or not? Explicit command. Explicit command. From him straight. 3 days, no questions asked. And they did. And that is why when Imam Ahmad was asked about Yazid, he didn't mention Karbala. He mentioned Harra. Because Karbala, it happened under his watch, but it's not the same. And somebody asked Imam Ahmad, there are groups of people who love Yazid. And Imam Ahmad said, does any Muslim or mu'min love Yazid? Is it possible for any mu'min to love Yazid? So he was asked, Imam Ahmad was asked, shouldn't we then curse him? And Imam Ahmad said, what? Since when did you hear me curse other people? We don't curse other people. We don't send Allah's la'na on them. So the question then, and then the third issue we said is the destruction of the Kaaba, and this was also done at the command of Yazid. But once again, the defense is he wanted to get Ibn al-Zubayr and not the Kaaba. And yeah, okay, what can be said? That's again, it's a technicality and it doesn't justify what he did. But Harra is straight 100% his. No question about it. Now, because of this, some of our scholars, they felt that it is justified to curse Yazid by name. Amongst the Hanabila, we had Abu Ya'la and Ibn al-Jawzi, the famous Ibn al-Jawzi. He wrote a booklet about the permissibility of cursing Yazid by name. Jawaz La'an Yazid. And his evidence is Allah curses, Ala la'natullahi ala al-zalimin. And if Yazid is not a zalim, there is no zalim in human history. So these scholars, and from the Shafi'is you had Al-Juwayni, you also had Ibn Hajar and As-Suyuti, they all said it is permissible to curse Yazid by name. And this is a position. And whoever follows it, I think somebody's already excited for it, right? Then there are certain people who have allowed it. But Imam Ahmad and others, they said that we leave his affair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is not of our akhlaq to send la'na upon a specific person by name unless Allah and His Messenger have mentioned that person by name, like Abu Jahl, like Fir'aun, then yes. Otherwise, we just stay quiet because we don't want to become gods, a'udhu billah, judging people. We don't want to do that because that's up to Allah to judge. Because when you say la'na, you are saying He shall never have any mercy. La'na means never have any mercy. And in the end of the day, and we have to be fair here, the crimes against Yazid were crimes of blood and fahisha and the sins of men, not of kufr in and of itself. He might have been drunk, but he still prayed. Al-dhulum dhulumat. But it's not kufr. It's not shirk. He didn't worship an idol. He didn't reject Islam. That's what we have to be fair with. We don't say anything. No Muslim can love Yazid, as Imam Ahmad said. But we should be quiet about his fate in the akhirah. We leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's no doubt he has to answer for much of what he has done. I've already gone way over my time limit. Any quick questions? I know there's so much on my mind. We have another week, inshallah. Next week we're going to do it. Bismillah, yes.
This fitna has been caused by Muawiyah ibn Sufyan himself by appointing his son, the first son, to be the Khalifa.
Wallahi, the one Sahabi that I'm not doing intentionally is Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. As the one Sahabi I'm intentionally not doing, because people are so sensitive. Once again, there's this ma'raka between these two groups, and because of this ma'raka, because of this intellectual battle, anybody who dares even discuss a political position of Muawiyah and disagree, he is made mubtadi' and dhal and mudil and whatnot. Even though Muawiyah radiyallahu an, and he is a Sahabi, he is of the lowest category of Sahaba. And you cannot compare him neither to Abu Bakr, nor to Umar, nor to Uthman, nor to Ali, nor to Ibn Zubayr, nor to any of them. He was a teenager when Mecca was conquered. He was a teenager when Mecca was conquered, and he converted at the conquest of Mecca, which is the lowest and the last category of Sahaba. So his status is nowhere near anybody else's status of the senior Sahaba and their children who saw the Prophet ﷺ. Nonetheless, he is a Sahabi, and we say radiyallahu anhu. And the Prophet ﷺ chose him to be a secretary. And he wrote letters for the Prophet ﷺ, so this is a high tazkiyah for him. Okay? To be a secretary is a high tazkiyah. Secretary means a personal assistant, and that's therefore automatically. But the point is, just because he's secretary doesn't mean every decision of his is sanctioned by Allah. This is the problem with some of our Sunni brethren. They're so fanatical about this issue, they go to extremes about the status of the Sahaba. And the Sahaba are human beings. Read their story, read the fitan, read what happened. And what theology says from our Sunni theology, we don't doubt the iman of the Sahaba. True. But that doesn't mean we have to agree with the decisions of the Sahaba. Big difference between the two. We say radiyallahu anhum wa radu an. Now, here's the point though. Suppose you want to blame Muawiyah radiyallahu anh for the decision. What if he felt sincerely that we have seen enough bloodshed with Jamal and Siffin, and enough is enough, and maybe my son isn't the best candidate, but transfer of power from father to son is the norm in the world, and it'll preserve the stability of the ummah. And to some extent, the Umayyad dynasty established the civilization of Islam. And this is an undeniable fact. There is a greater maslahah as well in the civilization of Islam being established. So who is right and wrong? Tilka ummatun qad khalat. It happened, it happened. The question is not what Muawiyah should have done. The question that we need to ask ourselves, what do we do in the light of what's going on? We'll talk a little bit about that next week, inshaAllah ta'ala. And there's no fa'idah in laying the blame on anybody. Everybody is sincere. Ibn Zubayr is sincere. Muawiyah is, I'm talking about Muawiyah. I'm not talking about Yazid and whatnot. I'm talking about Muawiyah's time. And Ali and Aisha. Everybody at that generation is sincere. I'm talking about that fitna. As for the next generation, no doubt Ibn Zubayr is Abid, Salih, Zahid, Muttaqi, and the other person is a fasiq and fajr. There is no comparison between the two. But their previous generation, we say both sides were sincere, and Allah Azza wa Jal shall forgive the both sides. Inshallah, we'll continue one more week. That's next Wednesday.